do we find the area of a circle? Now, last lesson we learned how to find the circumference of a circle, and that was how far around the circle would you have to go, the length around it. This time we're talking about the area, and it's how many square units, how many squares would it take to fill up the inside of this circle. It's never going to be like an exact number. It's never going to be like, ooh, 4 square feet or 16 square inches. It's never going to be a whole number. It's not going to be an integer because pi is involved. And once you start multiplying a number by pi, it's going to get messy, and you're going to have decimals. Well, by this point, we figure that you're old enough to wisely use a calculator, and that means you're going to still understand what you're telling the calculator to do. It's just speeding up the computation of mathematics. A is going to stand for the area, okay? Pi, when you're doing this by hand, will be 3.14. Sometimes the problems tell you to use pi as 3.14, and if they tell you to do it, use it. If not, and you've got a calculator, hit pi on your calculator. And then r. R is going to be the radius, and you see here is the center of the circle, and it's the radius going out to the edge, and it's 3 inches. So area equals pi times the radius raised to the second power. And what that literally means is pi times 3 times 3. And 3 times 3 is 9. So it's pi times 9. And then at this point, you get out your calculator, and you say pi times 9 is 28.2743388, and then my calculator screen stops. The number is still going, it just ran out of space there. And so, to the best approximation of that calculator, this is 28.2743388, which basically means we've got a little bit more than 28 squares in there, 28 square inches, so inches squared. Anytime you're dealing with area, make sure you square your units. Now, if they don't tell you what to round to, you've got several options. Usually you would round to the nearest tenth or the nearest hundredth. I kind of like the nearest hundredth myself. Makes it a little bit more accurate. So you look at the the third decimal place, and then you use that to judge what you do with the second decimal place. This 4 is less than 5, so I'm going to keep that 7 just how it is. So it's going to be 28.27 inches squared, the area of this circle. Now, if there was a little caveat in the directions that said leave in terms of pi, if this literally was told to you in the question, then technically what you would do is you would just multiply your radius by itself, and you would go, oh, okay, no big deal. The area is, write the number first, and pi goes right behind it. You'd say it's 9 pi inches squared. That means you just leave pi in your answer right there. Let's take a look at another one real quick. Area equals pi times the radius, which is 5.6, raised to the second power. Well, all that literally means is pi times 5.6 times 5.6 again. And your calculator's handy. Multiply 5.6 by itself, and instantly you know that it is 31.36, and we're still going to multiply it by pi. Now remember, if it said leave it in terms of pi, if they said this in the question, and I'm not saying that I want you to right now, but if they said it, all you'd have to do is say, okay, it's 31.36 pi meters to the second power meters squared. That's the abbreviation for meters squared. And you could be done right then. I still want to take this on down because I know some people always have issues rounding even in 8th grade. So 31.36 times pi is 98.520, and it goes on and on and on, and I just want to round to the hundredth. So I use this third decimal place, the thousandths position, to round the hundredth position. 0 is less than 5, so that means I'm going to keep this 2 exactly the same. And this becomes meters squared. It's an estimation or a rounded estimate. It's not exact, but really it'll be very, very close to being accurate to the real answer. Let's go on to this last one right here. This one's a little bit different. In fact, I want to draw in one more piece of information. And we're going to say that this red dot right here is the center. Okay, we'll call this one chord CD, and we're going to call this one diameter AB, and C will be the point in the middle. Oh, actually, sorry, forgot we already used C. Let's use X for the point in the middle. There we go. We need the radius, so that's not good. I don't see a radius. I see the diameter. This whole thing, AB, is 12.33 yards. This is not the radius because it's not touching the center. The radius goes from the center to the edge. If only there was a way that I could figure out what the half of this diameter was, because it's really composed of 2 radiuses there to make that one diameter. See it? One radius is here in yellow, one radius is here in blue. Together, they're 12.33. But they're both the same length, so what's half of your diameter? Divide it by 2 and find out. Do not round at this point. Do not round your radius or diameter ever. Please don't do that. 6.165 is the radius length, because if you times this by 2, you get 12.33. So now we just plug this in to our formula up here. And to show you how we can speed this up with the calculator, if you know how to type in 6.165 to the second power, which basically just means this, 6.15 times 6.165, that's all it means. We take this base and we multiply it by itself the number of times the exponent tells us to. But if you literally type this whole thing into the calculator, pi times 6.615 squared, then we find out very quickly with just one keyboard stroke that it's 119.403 yards squared. And the decimals keep going, and now we're going to go ahead and round it to the nearest hundredth. 119.40 yards squared. What happens with a lot of times is that people will go ahead and stick in the diameter for radius, and that'll throw off your answer. At other times, people forget to label their answer correctly, or they just don't pay attention to what the question is wanting. They won't leave it in terms of pi, or they won't round to the correct decimal. So if you just pay a little bit more attention to what's being asked of you, you'll avoid a lot of mistakes. And then always ask yourself, is the radius half of the diameter? Sometimes people accidentally take the diameter and multiply it by 2 because that's what you have to do to get the diameter from radius, and they're not thinking it through. They'll make silly mistakes like that, and I certainly know I have in the past at times when I'm rushing it. So pay attention to detail, and most of the time you'll get your area correct without any type of issues. But when you make those mistakes, not if, but when you make those mistakes, have confidence in yourself that you know what you're doing. You just made a silly mistake. Get right back on the horse, so to speak, and solve it correctly.